Hello Jungkook fans, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a side of Jungkook that feels deeper, quieter, and more powerful than ever. These aren't just words from an interview or a passing statement, they're a reflection of an artist who refuses to be carried by the current and instead chooses to shape his own direction. As you watch this video, listen closely, because what Jungkook reveals here isn't just about change. It's about control, vision, and the moment an artist decides to create the flow instead of following it. Jungkook has never been comfortable standing still, and that truth feels louder than ever now. In a recent exclusive feature tied to issue 26, his words don't sound like a casual quote, they feel like a declaration. Not a message crafted for trends or headlines, but something deeper, something personal. When Jungkook says he has always pursued change, it's not a metaphor. It's a timeline. A quiet map of how he's lived, worked, and evolved, often ahead of the world that watches him. What makes this moment powerful isn't just the statement itself, but the confidence behind it. "I don't want to be dragged by the flow," that line alone says everything. In an industry that rewards repetition, comfort, and predictability, Jungkook openly positions himself against the current. He doesn't speak like someone reacting to pressure. He speaks like someone who already understands where he's going, even if the rest of the world hasn't caught up yet. For years, fans have watched Jungkook adapt effortlessly from genre to genre, from image to image, but this feels different. This isn't adaptation. This is intention. There's a clear separation between following trends and shaping them, and Jungkook is drawing that line himself. The artist he describes isn't chasing relevance, he's building direction. Slowly, deliberately, on his own terms. Behind that calm tone is an artist who's clearly aware of his weight in the global scene. Jungkook knows that every move he makes creates ripples: fashion, sound, performance, even silence. But instead of leaning into expectation, he leans into change. Not loud rebellion, but quiet control. The kind that reshapes things without asking permission. This mindset explains why his recent era feels so intentional. Nothing appears accidental. From creative choices to public presence, there's a sense that Jungkook is no longer experimenting to discover who he is, he already knows. Now he's refining it. And that confidence changes everything. It shifts how fans listen, how the industry reacts, and how his legacy begins to form in real time. What stands out most is how human this evolution feels. There's no grand announcement. No dramatic rebrand, just honesty, growth that doesn't need validation. Jungkook isn't asking to be seen as a leader, he's simply moving forward, and the world is following whether it realizes it or not. In many ways, this statement doesn't close a chapter, it opens one. A phase where Jungkook is no longer defined by momentum, but by vision. Not an idol carried by waves, but an artist shaping the tide quietly, confidently, and undeniably. What's striking is how this perspective reframes everything Jungkook has done up to this point. Moments that once felt like bold risks now look like early signals, quiet warnings that he was never meant to move in straight lines. Change for him isn't a phase, it's a language. One he's been speaking long before people learned how to listen. There's also a subtle maturity in the way he frames control. Jungkook doesn't reject the industry, he understands it. He simply refuses to be consumed by it. Creating the flow doesn't mean overpowering others, it means trusting his instincts enough to let his work pull the world forward naturally. That restraint, that patience, is what separates noise from influence. Fans often talk about Jungkook's versatility, but versatility alone doesn't explain this moment. What we're witnessing is alignment. His identity as an artist, performer, and individual is finally moving in the same direction. No masks, no hesitation, just clarity. And clarity, in a world addicted to speed, is radical. This is why his words resonate far beyond fandom spaces. They speak to artists, creators, and dreamers who are tired of chasing algorithms and approval. Jungkook's message isn't motivational, it's reflective. It asks a simple but uncomfortable question: are you moving because you want to, or because the current is pulling you? There's also an unspoken courage here. Choosing to create the flow means accepting uncertainty. It means standing alone at times. Jungkook acknowledges that without dramatizing it. His confidence doesn't come from certainty of success, it comes from certainty of self. And that kind of confidence can't be taught or manufactured. As this new chapter unfolds, one thing becomes clear. Jungkook isn't redefining himself for the world. He's redefining the world he wants to move through. And whether the industry is ready or not, the direction has already shifted. Quietly, irreversibly. There's a quiet defiance in how Jungkook approaches growth now. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that changes atmosphere. He no longer explains himself in excess, he lets intention do the talking. Every choice feels measured, not cautious, but conscious. And that distinction matters. It signals an artist who understands that longevity isn't built on constant noise, but on meaningful movement. What's unfolding feels less like a reinvention and more like a return. A return to instinct, to curiosity, to the version of Jungkook who was never afraid of change, only uninterested in being confined by it. The difference now is scale. His personal evolution no longer exists in isolation, it echoes globally. And yet, he treats it with surprising intimacy, as if this journey is still, at its core, just between him and the art. This is where his influence becomes most evident. Not in numbers or records, but in permission. Jungkook gives others permission to slow down, to shift direction, to choose depth over speed, without preaching, without performance, just by being honest about his own process. That honesty cuts through the spectacle and lands somewhere deeper, somewhere lasting. There's also a sense that Jungkook is redefining what success means to him. It's no longer about arriving, it's about steering. About choosing paths that feel right, even if they're unfamiliar. Creating the flow isn't about control over others, it's about responsibility to self. And that responsibility shows in the calm certainty of his words. As observers, it becomes clear that we're not just witnessing an era, we're witnessing authorship. Jungkook isn't stepping into a role written for him. He's writing it as he goes, trusting that the story will make sense because it's honest. And in that honesty, the future doesn't feel forced, it feels inevitable. In the end, what Jungkook offers isn't an answer, it's a direction. A reminder that true artistry doesn't rush to be understood. It moves forward quietly, shaping space as it goes. His journey now feels less about proving something to the world and more about honoring the internal compass that's guided him all along. And as that compass steadies, the flow he creates becomes impossible to ignore, not because it's loud, but because it's real. If this story gave you a new perspective on Jungkook and his journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue sharing exclusive stories and deeper insights made for true Jungkook fans. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.